Let's go.
Starting out with a panel discussion on when technology will replace people in multifamily. Our session this afternoon is moderated by the product manager of Infotycoon, which helps owners and property managers create inspections and reports that improve NOI. Please welcome Rosanna Beron, darn it, and all of our panelists. Thank you, guys.
Testing. Okay. Thank you, Dana, for the intro. And thank you, panelists, for joining me today. I'm going to give you each a chance to introduce yourselves, if that's okay. Yeah? Go ahead.
I'm Mike Brewer, RADCO Companies, Atlanta-based company that owns and manages roughly 20,000 apartment units, mainly here in the Southeast, but a few in Texas, Indiana, and other states.
Zlatko Bogoevski. I'm with Betterbot. We are a conversational leasing technology company. We want to help you guys fill up your apartment complexes with as many qualified prospective renters.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Myers. I'm the founder and CEO of Hayvn. For those of you unfamiliar, Hayvn is an ecosystem of software, hardware, and services for the multifamily industry. We combine access control, a resident engagement app, and a powerful platform for managing your properties.
Awesome. Thank you all for being here today at Shadow Summit with us to talk about the interface and collision of tech and people in multifamily. Let's jump right in. And I was told you go by Z, Zlatko, so I'll call you Z. And then I'll say Mike at RADCO if it's that Mike, and I'll just point at you if it's you, Mike. Okay? All right, so McKinsey estimates that up to 375 million workers, or 14% of the global workforce, may need to change occupations, and virtually all of us are going to need to adapt to working alongside our machines in new ways due to the increasing adoption of artificial intelligence. That's across all industries. When we think specifically about multifamily, what is the reality of technology taking the place of people in our industry? Mike, do you want to start?
Sure. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart, and I think now is the right time to start reskilling and upskilling people. Just as an example, at RADCO, we hired our first digital leasing consultant right along the lines of what Z does. You know, never sick, 365 days a year. She shows up, she answers every single one of our telephone calls 100% of the time, 7 days a week. Triages the phone calls either to service-related things that would actually ring through to the office and or to a leasing and sales team that would actually take a tour, right? So she sets an appointment and then actually hands off to a human at some point. But the future iterations of this technology, in my mind, could certainly replace a leasing consultant, especially if you've got, say, a pod of communities that are within a 1 to 3 to 5 mile range of one another. When she can tap into Google Maps and start to distribute that labor, you can actually lease apartments with less labor. You marry that into access control, and the technology can actually take a prospect from soup to nuts, right, to sign a lease without a human ever being involved.
Totally. That leads into, I'm going to jump into a different question because it leads into something else on our list. We just launched a self-service portal at Infotycoon. There was an earlier panel today that talked about tech-enabled real estate, and they also mentioned self-service. So I'm sure self-service, that concept touches each of you in your day-to-day business realities. So with that in mind, what role will people play in the industry as technology continues to evolve and as it reimagines how we all do our jobs and how our customers and users interact with our companies and products? Z, do you have any thoughts?
Sure. I think about AI a lot and how that's going to impact humans, and obviously self-service. I mean, we provide that. But I'm not too quick to say that we'll be replacing humans right away. But what we will be doing is rethinking what humans are doing on the job. Right now, a lot of the jobs that humans are doing are better suited for bots. So I think what we're going to have to do is rethink what humans should be doing. On the other hand, when it comes to connecting with another human, bots are not very good at that. So while we'll see more self-service, I think we'll see humans actually move to channels that deal directly with humans where bots are not well suited to handle. So
makes sense. Mike, do you have any thoughts you want to add?
Well, I believe we're a long ways away from generalized AI that could actually replace everything a human is able to do. My thoughts on technology like this is that AI needs, in order for an AI to be effective, it needs to have a specific task and a large data set. And without that, and also people that are very capable and knowledgeable in the field setting it up, you're not going to create an AI that produces anything valuable. So there are certain things that are prime candidates for being automated. Many of the chat aspects that my colleague over here is developing is a good example of that. But this is a service industry, and nobody serves as good as a person could serve another person. And so that's my opinion.
It's a great point. Did you want to add anything, Mike?
Yeah, I think they're absolutely right. I think when emotions enter the equation, that's what a bot doesn't do very well. When it's analytically inclined or task-oriented, certainly the technology can do it. But yeah, until a computer or an AI or a chatbot learns how to deal with emotion, it's not going to be that useful.
And also, if I can add,
yeah.
There has been a very interesting paradox in multifamily. We've been adding technology to automate things in multifamily for the last 20 years, but the end result has been that people have been busier and busier. We have not been able to reduce headcount, so beware of that.
Very, very true. Okay, so I have a more general question. About a third of Americans live on a multifamily property. So how do you currently see technology reshaping the industry and that experience today, other than AI? Like, what other trends do you see, or what other ways do you see technology infiltrating that experience, either for residents or for your staff on site? Feel free to jump in, Mike.
I see some interesting things happening in the IoT space. There's a company based in Houston, Texas. They're not multifamily specific. Modally is the name of the company. And they're embedding sensors into HVAC equipment such that the equipment can self-diagnose, right? And so if a resident has an air conditioner problem, or they're about to have an air conditioner problem, the air conditioner itself will actually send out a message to a technician on site to go and service that piece of equipment before it breaks down. So the experience is enriched or enhanced because they never have to deal with that.
I think the pattern that I've seen so far is that there was sort of a first generation of technology companies in the prop tech space, and a lot of them were mainly focused on how do we improve utility efficiency. So water, power, energy, heating, HVAC, preventative maintenance, and that's great. I love that. This industry is embracing green technology and not only seeing an ROI on it, but also it's good for the earth. The problem that I've seen from the first generation is many different companies creating a single solution, and as a property manager who may or may not be tech savvy, evaluating these hundreds of different companies and learning what to integrate into your building and doing it effectively is difficult at best and risky to your career at worst.
Yeah, I think Darren did a really great job earlier. I don't know if you guys heard his session before lunch, but he was talking specifically about how there's tons of tech that's out there that would be interesting to him to roll out on his properties in his portfolio, but you can only effectively do that with 2 or 3 per year. So evaluating and then rolling out, it's a whole process. So Anything? Did you want to add anything, Z?
Yeah, and I'm starting to see that property management companies have more of a process for integrating innovative products. While before they didn't have a process, now they may have a director of innovation and staff that are specifically tasked with evaluating products because it is so time consuming in order to find that optimal mix.
Yes, yeah. I was at AAA recently where I saw Mike, and on one of the panels they talked about how they do something similar to Shark Tank, and they have vendors, tech vendors, come in to pitch their product to make it in front of like the board that's going to select what's going to get rolled out that year. So it's very, very interesting. So I'm going to start with you on this question, Mike. I'm going to pick on you because you guys are a finalist again this year on the list of best places to work in multifamily. Congrats. So related to that, how do you believe that people working on the front lines of multifamily can prepare for how tech is going to change the future of their jobs? Is there any way for them to future-proof themselves, in essence?
Yeah, and I see Patrick. Great organization, by the way. So I think, what can they do now? I think first and foremost, they have to be cognizant of what is going on, not only in the multifamily space, but across industry, really as it's being driven by the big four, right? Amazon, Apple, Google, et cetera. So consumer behavior, every single person in this room is our behavior is being modified by those particular organizations, right? And so if you pay attention to what those organizations are doing in the broader space, but to you individually, that's really your bellwether, right, or your sort of lighthouse that you need to look at in order to reskill or upskill yourself. And not everybody is going to be a technologist, not everybody's going to be an engineer, not everybody's going to develop software. But I think to the point that these gentlemen have made, I think humanities are going to reintroduce themselves into the multifamily space. You know, many years ago, Bill Gates said, "I'm going to put a computer on every single desk in the entire world." I think we're in the midst or on the cusp of taking every single one of those computers off the desks and reintroducing humanities back into the equation so people actually look each other in the eye when they're doing business. So that's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Yep. I couldn't agree more. And it's very interesting. The more I work in AI, the more I believe in humanity. And so I'm not really big on Terminator scenarios right now. I'm an optimist. But on the other hand, when it comes to how do you prepare yourself, sometimes all it takes is just ask yourself, I mean, what I'm doing right now, are these tasks easy for a computer, software, robot to do or not? And one task that's going to be always difficult for robots is communication with other humans. So get better at communicating in person. I think that's not going to be replaced anytime soon.
I think Z touched on some good points there. I think if I were to give advice on how to prepare for adjusting for upcoming technologies is to gain an understanding of what can be replaced and what can't. There's certain applications like maintenance, for instance, that you can't. It's going to be extremely difficult. Not to say it couldn't be done, but it would be very difficult to make a robot that could do plumbing, for instance. And so you have maintenance staff that does that. They're going to be very difficult to replace. However, something like 40% of maintenance staff also handle packages. So, because there's such an overflow for those. So I would say focus on the things that you can automate so that it allows you to repurpose your staff and to the things that you can't. And allow them to, specialize in what they excel at and use technology to sort of give your staff superpowers. Another sort of theme I've seen in the industry is there's a lot of turnover for site staff. So anything that you can do to reduce the training that requires them to learn new technology by making it simpler and easier to use is going to go a long way. So start early.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, I think as it impacts the individual specifically, if that individual would take the mindset of literally automating themselves out of a job, then by default they sort of become of value because they did it, right? So now they can go and help others do that. Now ultimately I guess the end is you're out of a job completely, but that seems like a skill set that you could build.
Definitely. Okay, so the Jetsons was one of my favorite cartoons growing up. So thinking about Rosie the robot, do you guys foresee a day when humanoid robots would be commonplace on site at a community? And what would that look like? Like, would they be embedded with the management team? Would you see them interacting with residents on site? What are your thoughts?
It certainly makes for good science fiction, but given the current technology, I don't see that happening anytime soon, even though it's an interesting thought, yeah.
Down the road, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, down the road, yeah.
I forget the specific term for this, but there's something ingrained within human, just our existence, that if we see something that looks like us but is off, we're immediately scared by it. And that's pretty much been the case for every humanoid robot I've seen so far. And so I might want to not live around those things for a while, but that might just be me.
I hear a lot of cases for humanity on the panel. I like it. I like it. Did you want to say anything, Mike?
Well, I think future interactions are not necessarily going to be in that form or fashion. They're going to rather be embedded in the stuff and the things that we interact with. So I don't know that I picture that so much as I do just stuff telling me or anticipating and doing for in ahead of me. Right?
More intuitive and automated.
That's right.
Okay, last question before we hopefully have some time for Q&A with the audience. So investment in prop tech has grown from $500 million in 2013 to 12.9 billion just in the first half of this year alone. So given those investment trends, I'm going to ask you guys to take out your crystal balls and tell us what you all see as the kind of things that are going to come to fruition over the course of the next 5 to 10 years in multifamily industry with tech. So what trends do you expect to gain traction and be commonplace 5 to 10 years from now?
So is that number inclusive of WeWork investment or without? Because
yeah, like three-quarters of that is
true.
I think it really makes a difference because if you take that out, that's it's not as much. But
I'll check that number.
Yeah. But I do think, look, I think we're in the messy middle right now, or the wild, wild west, or whatever you want to label it. And I think I lovingly refer to it as the prop tech tsunami making landfall in the multifamily space. And I think that there's going to be a lot of shakeout over the next, let's say, 36 months plus or minus. And I think at that moment in time, if the Yardys of the world and those are the property management systems that govern our space, if they haven't scooped up everybody by then, or startups haven't sold out to them by then, I think there will be some interesting things that allow for labor distribution, being really smart about the way you distribute labor, really smart technology as it relates to self-diagnosing mechanics in the apartment space, which will it'll give the resident an experience, I think, that is in advance of anything you can imagine today. You can imagine it, but it'd be in advance of that in the future.
Exciting. Z, what do you see?
The future is notoriously difficult to predict. But I think you can just look around here in Startup Alley and see what's happening. So one thing, though, that I think is going to change is how we deliver experiences to renters. What does it mean to live on a multifamily property? I think there's going to be a big differentiation with more amenities being introduced, more services being introduced in order to change the way people live in multifamily. And so that's going to be one big component, and I can see that happening with technology that's already in place. The second component, I think that we're going to see an evolution of the leasing operation by more automation in order to, again, do a better job with prospective renters.
Yep. We've heard a lot today about the resident's experience and thinking about that through the lens of a client's experience as opposed to an interaction and a transaction of a renter and a leaser, right? So what would you add to that, Mike?
I mean, touching on the fragmentation issues that the industry is facing right now, consolidation seems like a pretty obvious play, especially in the short term. Technology isn't exactly evenly distributed against the asset classes either. So I would say that another trend that I would expect to see is creating maybe not like less capable, but less expensive devices that allows the permeation of technology into industries that aren't currently being affected by it. So the overall quality of life I believe is boundless. Really, I think we're really setting ourselves up for a type of living that is so convenient and secure and simple and easy that I'm really psyched to be a part of it.
There's a lot to look forward to. I think, do we have time for questions? Yeah? Questions in the audience? Anybody? Okay. Maybe not? Okay. Go ahead.
Do you think technology is going to contribute to potentially lowering rents for multifamily homes, or do you think that it has no impact on it whatsoever? I know it's a little more complicated because of the supply and demand of these homes, but overall, what do you think technology's role is in controlling rents?
I'm going to repeat it so that the camera catches it. So she's asking if technology is going to be able to have the effect of lowering rent over time.
Well, one of the trends I've seen recently is densification. By using technology to allow people to live closer together more comfortably, that has the potential to lower rents. It's a good question. Some of the processes are going to get automated, like security. You could use nightscape robots instead of having on-site staff doing that, potentially lowering the cost of living. It seems to be the trend in the opposite direction, where the economy is doing really well right now, and rather than save money, we're looking for improving the overall quality of life. So I wouldn't say that it's strongly headed in that direction, but I'm seeing a slight trend. But excellent question.
Yeah. Agreed. Any other questions in the audience? No? Okay. All right. I guess we did a good job of talking about our topic. Thank you guys for being here today.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.